welcome back to Cookie Pocket. I'm joined, as always, by Mitchell and Zach. I'm Christian, by the way.
Hi.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you, too.
I have no idea what episode number it is. I never have, really.
64?
64, yeah.
Oh, what up? 64. Do. It's a Beatles song. Anyway.
Oh, I see. Okay.
I'm sorry. We are discussing Breakfast at Tiffany's today. A classic Audrey Hepburn film starring Audrey Hepburn.
Yep. How about that?
I knew it.
Yeah. Directed by Blake Edwards. It's all the way from 1961 with George Papard as Paul Varjak, and Mickey Rooney's in it too. And so, this is very much a romantic film. Audrey Hepburn is playing this sort of socialite, Miss Holly Golightly. And, she's kind of just out there, doing her thing. And that's kind of the movie.
Yeah.
I guess we'll start with ratings out of 5 and general thoughts. Who would like to start?
Well, I'm going to jump in and address the elephant in the room. So Mickey Rooney is in this film. He plays a character named Mr. Yunioshi. And right from that name, you might be seeing some red flags. Mr. Yunioshi is a blatantly over-the-top Asian stereotype, complete with buck teeth and thick glasses. And it's deeply painful to watch. Usually, if somebody says, I had to turn a movie off after like 20 minutes, I go, well, I feel like you should have given it a chance. If you have to stop watching Breakfast at Tiffany's after 10 minutes because of Mr. Yunioshi, I don't blame you at all. That being said, I gave this film a 3 out of 5. I thought it was good, but I thought that it really picked up in the second half. The first half of this movie is mostly revolves around gags with Mr. Yunioshi or parties amongst the extremely rich, who I find very obnoxious and difficult to relate to. And I think on some level their characters are kind of meant to be obnoxious and difficult to relate to, but I don't find the gags based around their interactions with the other characters very funny or very entertaining to watch. And for me, where I start getting invested is pretty much after the sequence where Audrey Hepburn sings Moon River. That scene on, I'm a lot more invested because we start addressing her relationship to our male lead, George Papard, a lot more. And I think when they're on screen is when this really works. When they aren't, I think I'm really not all that invested. So I think it ends well, and I think midpoint on, it gets pretty good. But first half, I had a lot of trouble getting on board. So yeah, the conclusion's great, and I like that cat. My favorite part of this film might seriously be the trained cat who plays Cat, the nameless cat in the movie, because it's difficult to train cats, and this cat reacts to things and has great timing and little bits and things like that, which I'm sure a lot of it's built into the edit, but it's difficult to edit around the cat too. So that's a great bit of the film. 3 out of 5. It's good. I don't necessarily know if it's the cinema classic that so many people make it out to be, as much as it is an icon of cinema. I think maybe it's more iconic than it is lasting, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, that's fair enough.
I don't know, Zach. Catwoman stole her wardrobe, so I related the most to the cat in this movie, and that's the biggest problem with it. I gave it a 3.5 out of 5. Zach doesn't do halves.
I don't do halves.
He doesn't. It's very frustrating.
Yes. So, I really enjoyed watching the conversations. I really liked that party. I thought it was ridiculous, and I was totally believing that it was like a 60s party. I will quote my mom in saying the only thing that this was missing was the drugs for the time period, because literally everything else is staunchly New York 60s and a way too expensive apartment that's really small. And I really like that aesthetic a lot. In terms of the actual romance, I just didn't feel like it was that believable. And I know that sounds really ridiculous because a lot of romances are just not believable to begin with, and that's part of the premise a lot of the time. But in this case, I thought it was particularly unrealistic because I felt like the relationship was coming off of circumstances. It was entirely based off of their circumstances instead of them actually being like, fully formed individuals. And I understand that's like part of the appeal because they're obviously not like totally morally correct or have any direction necessarily. I mean, they have a vague sense of direction, but for the most part, they're not really. They're kind of just shooting shots in the dark. And for me, I can't really relate to that at all. And as an audience member, and I don't really understand that kind of philosophy. Like, I don't really understand why they would be their character motivations and why they would be like, why she would be so free reigning and like ignorant to the fact that she's, aiding a mobster and things like that. And I mean, I don't mind them being like occupationless, quote unquote, and kind of just mooching off of different people and being resourceful and things like that. But I mean, I feel like it kind of detracts from their relatability, and I feel like that's really the only like major problem I have. And I mean, I understand it's a part. It helps aid the story being more original, and I feel like it definitely doesn't. It's not like Romeo and Juliet, or there's like these fully formed characters that are dignified or have a great sense of what they want kind of thing, or they don't have a sense for what they want and then they meet each other and then they do have a sense for what they want. For this, I just feel like they're just totally wacky, just doing whatever, and they're totally free reigning, and then they find direction with each other. That's the assumption anyway, because I don't know how long it's going to last after the cameras turn off, but 3.5 out of 5. I still really enjoyed the conversations. I'm just not totally on board with the way the romance develops, but pretty much everything else I really enjoyed, and I just think the acting is excellent, and the aesthetic works really well, and everything else works really well for me, honestly.
Excellent. This is good. This is fun. I was really curious to see what you guys would have to say about this, because this is one of my all-time favorites. I first watched this, oh my goodness, I think over 2 years ago now. That is kind of scary.
Wow.
Because in the midst of 2020, I found myself with a lot of free time, and I sort of started filling that free time with movies. And that's sort of what I think spurred Cookie Pocket and just my general habit towards watching like basically a film a day now, if I can manage it. And I don't know why this struck me so much back then, but it did. And for the most part, it retained its appeal. On this watch, I definitely... I would still call it a classic in certain ways, and it's still a favorite for me, but I can see what Zach means when he says it's more iconic than like a cinema classic, because there are themes here. And Mr. Yuniyoshi, I mean, yeah, let's address it again, because why not? We're all gonna process it differently. I think we all have a common understanding about like what's important in the real world, and and that it is certainly and like unacceptable portrayal by today's standards, and probably by the 60s standards too, really. It's really just so over the top. I mean, and I would just say, like, if you laugh because it makes you uncomfortable, I think that's okay. I don't think that makes you a terrible person. Like, we all sort of process these things differently. And I'll also echo what Zach said. Like, if it's something you can't get past to enjoy the rest of the film, then like that's okay too. So, you know.
And he keeps showing up too. He actually becomes like part of the plot towards the end, so.
Yeah, it's very much like a thorn in the side of the whole thing.
Yeah.
He's in it like immediately too. Like it's like the second scene and he's right there. And yeah, I mean it's one thing to have like a white actor playing an Asian character. Like that was a practice that continued like even into like the early 70s in some films. But the fact that he is so one note feels like it would have been like out of date and kind of tasteless even in 1961.
Yeah, no, yeah. I would agree. And I think just like from a style perspective, in my first review for this 2 years ago, I think I said that he's so distracting in like an otherwise very like stylish and deliberate feeling movie. Like even if we stripped away the like blatant racialized aspects of it, I think I'd still find the character annoying because he's just like disruptive by nature, and I don't think it serves much of a purpose except for when it's like plot motivated towards the end. But Audrey Hepburn is certainly the heart of this whole thing. I have seen, I guess, like 5 of her performances now, and I still think this is probably the most involving. She plays drunk very well, very convincingly, and you get the sense that she's sort of like drifting in denial. And Mitchell, when you mentioned like the nature of their relationship being like circumstance and not so much about the two of them. I don't remember exactly how you said it.
Yeah.
I think you were right. I think the way that works for me, I think I could totally see why that would destabilize how convincing it is, and I see that a bit myself. But I think it works like as an exercise of the way Holly like tries to behave as though she is not tied to anything. Like herself and Kat are just no-name slobs, and they don't belong to anybody. But and Paul is about to be like another cog in that machine, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
But then she can't help being human with him and feeling what she didn't expect or set out to feel with him, I guess, if that makes sense.
It also is, I was going to say, it falls into the thing where I was saying it's based off of assumption, because a large majority of her time on screen is her like making mistakes and saying the wrong things and like disrespecting him. And I will give the movie credit. Like I it's not like it was totally unbelievable. Like, you know, there's some crazy people out there. and she, you know, obviously she's so free reigning and so difficult to predict that kind of fell well into her, you know, developing and into being with him and everything. I feel like that wasn't really a big problem, but I definitely feel like why would he stay? Like why? I mean, well, because he loves her is like the big thing. Like, okay, well, he can tolerate anything, even though she's like doing all the wrong things. And to me, that's more annoying. But I don't know.
No, that's totally fair.
Yeah.
What do you make of that, Zach?
I think there's also a chance that certain aspects of their attraction to each other are kind of made foggy by the Hays Code. Now, I haven't read the book.
Yeah,
I can't say how much detail the book goes into in regard to things like the powder room and things like that. But I do think there's a certain aspect to their relationship that, though I think there's lots of like implied semi-racy content, like I don't think it feels very like playful and chaste in a way, which I don't necessarily think the original story gels with. This feels like a very sexual story, which in the film it can't quite be because of the limitations of Hollywood of the time. And I think maybe that's part of why their relationship doesn't gel as well as it could. The film sort of feels like these two should, at least in a way, be kind of all over each other, but they sort of can't be. And I also think maybe part of that's just the way that the male lead is written. Male leads in Hollywood up until like the 70s are kind of hit or miss a lot of the time, where you can have like a really dynamic lead, or you can have a lead who is like a block of wood with a gelled haircut. I don't think George Peppard is entirely the latter by any means, but I do think he's occasionally written as one where he kind of just sits there and smokes and, well, frankly, my dear, da 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 da. And I do think part of that also takes away a little bit from the romance and the drama as well.
I don't want to have sexy time with you anymore. The money ain't worth it. It's all about the love now.
Oh gosh.
Okay, it's not gonna last.
I did do some limited reading. And apparently Truman Capote, the novelist, wanted to cast Marilyn Monroe, not Audrey Hepburn, which certainly
pretty
suggests...
much plays right into what Zach was saying.
Yeah. But at the same time, when asked, like, I understand that the novel is also kind of ambiguous about what the parlor room really means.
Okay.
And I think Capote was, like, persistent in refusing to ever use the term prostitute to describe Holly. So there's... I think that ambiguity is also intentional, despite like the way any censorship may have played into it. And I also understand that Peppard was a little bit feisty about the way his character interacted with, I forget her name, but I understand in the novel, I'm trying to find her name.
The woman who rents the apartment to him,
yes,
right?
Tui or something?
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you. I understand that that's like a bigger part of the novel, but Papard really didn't want to be like emasculated on screen, so that dynamic was sort of toned down a little bit. And so, I mean, that's another sort of limiting factor and probably contributes to the ambiguity as well. But aside from that, I wanted to ask you guys about the score. We've got a score from Henry Mancini. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. Who there's some like bossa nova instrumentals in here, several original compositions, I should say, and also a few elaborations on Moon River. Did it work for you guys? And what did you think also of the Moon River scene where Audrey Hepburn sings and plays guitar?
Moon River's the best scene in the movie, I think.
Yeah.
It's either Moon River or the climax in the alley might be the best looking scene in the movie, but I still think Moon River is probably the best scene overall. In terms of the score, I think it was functional. A lot of these like Love in the Big City movies from the 60s, I think their scores kind of blend together in a lot of ways. A lot of them do incorporate kind of that element of bossa nova, just because that was something that was big amongst the elite at the time. And so that kind of injects itself into the scores of these films. I mean, I think it's functional. I think it works for the setting, but I don't think anything is as memorable in the film as that Moon River scene.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, the piano doesn't really stick out to me as much because I'd usually expect a lot of piano in this type of movie. And I feel like the jazz, like the symphonic jazz parts of it are like, they're definitely functional, but I feel like it definitely reinforces the aesthetic that it's in New York in the 60s. And these are artists that are probably going to fail in life, and that's okay. But yeah, the Moon River scene is awesome. And I think it's the perfect length, and I definitely feel like that definitely feels like some real character development without anyone actually like speaking how they feel, and I feel like it really works well.
Yeah, a lot of which I think comes, I mean, this is going off the point of music, but a lot of that I think comes from the costuming as well.
Yeah.
Because that's sort of the same time that both we and Papard's character, whose name I can't remember.
Paul.
Paul.
Or Fred.
I thought it was probably Paul.
If you want to make him mad.
That's true, yeah. But that's kind of the first time that we or the character see her kind of as herself. I mean, she's not dressing up for anyone. She's not in her little black dress or in jewels, or she doesn't have her cigarette holder or beehive. She's just drying her hair and jeans and a sweater, and she's kind of just being herself in that moment, and I think there's a lot of importance to that, and it's kind of the turning point of their relationship and of the film.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's so affecting. It's it's one of those things where I could stumble and try to find the words, but I can't. It really is just a magical moment. I think it does work better than the finale because, well, this isn't the finale, but I guess the first time Papard sort of gives her not an ultimatum, but tries to have like this encounter where they figure out what the heck's going on between the two of them. And what he says gets to be a little abrupt, and I guess it's as much a facet of the writing as it is the sort of male block of wood lead factor. But when he's sort of like, "I love you, you belong to me," that always feels like a little abrupt to me.
Mm-hmm.
But it works for me because of her response. And that's where the whole like no name slob thing comes from.
Yeah.
Nobody belongs to anyone. I don't belong to you. Blah blah blah. And I think the real tragedy of that disconnect is probably that neither of them are right. Because obviously she doesn't wholly belong to him. She can't belong to him just because he loves her. While at the same time, no one can ever really be truly independent of the people they care about, which I guess she realizes by the ultimate ending scene.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have too much more specific to ask you guys about. I think we've sort of covered a lot of the bases here in a quick time, but final thoughts.
I do want to interject that I don't know if the movie necessarily gets that neither of them are right, though.
That's fair, yeah.
I think the movie very much thinks that Paul is right, which is part of what maybe doesn't work for me that well about their relationship, where I think the truth is that, like, he doesn't have any kind of like ownership of her, but they are both inclined towards each other, and they can't help that. And I think there's maybe more of a conscious middle ground that exists in the ending than the movie even knows about. But yeah, I mean,
it's the cat, Zach. It's the cat.
The cat is
That's the middle.
They went back to the cat. That's the
Yeah.
whole thing.
Yeah.
I am glad they went back to the cat. Maybe
Yeah.
the saddest shot in the whole movie for me is Cat, like, on the grate in the rain.
Save him.
As they drive away, just like, okay, and then he walks away. But yeah, no real other final thoughts. My father just wanted me to mention that he thought this movie was dumb.
Thank you for your contribution, Mr. Garrigus. We appreciate it.
I give this 3.5 out of 5. I really liked it. I mean, I liked it more than West Side Story. Okay.
Interesting.
I was thinking of West Side Story.
West Side Story does, I just see that now. That's an example of when I was saying like trying to break the cliches. There's a lot of cliches that are established in West Side Story that were broken in this that I really appreciated, and that was one of the main reasons why I was kept engaged. The only problem is that they break those cliches with their own cliches, and then it's clicheception, and then Reed Richards shows up, and then everything just goes terrible. So. So yeah, 3.5 out of 5. I really enjoyed it. Audrey Hepburn's really great, especially because I don't think her personality is like anything like that. I feel like she's way more like introverted in real life, and her being so flamboyantly like getting drunk and throwing stuff around, and Jose saying, "I don't know what's going on. What does the letter say?" Yeah, that scene was great. But yeah, 3.5 out of 5.
Yeah, Audrey Hepburn and Marilyn both are these actresses that I think get more remembered as like sex symbols for specific films that they did, but like I think they're much better actors than a lot of people remember.
Yeah, no, Audrey is astounding, and I think the first time I've ever mentioned Breakfast at Tiffany's was I think in my first Magical Cinema tour last season. I sort of gave a brief recap of how I was getting into Hepburn's filmography, and I'm glad we were able to revisit this in a sort of longer form and hear your guys' thoughts as well. I really think it all starts and ends with Audrey. I said in my review, cut Mr. Yunioshi, and it's maybe 5 stars for me. And I totally understand also how someone could just find this stupid or aimless or couldn't get past Yunioshi. Those are all totally fair. For me, it does the trick, and that all really just comes from Hepburn and a little bit what's around her, but mostly her. Also, my favorite track on the soundtrack is, I believe it's called Something for the Cat. So if you're a fan of the Cat, if you're a fan of Bossa Nova, give it a listen and, like, I don't know, rock out or something. Try not to think about Reed Richards.
Yeah,
you can help
bang.
it.
Oh, and the funniest part of the film was the OJ, the rich guy that called his lawyer to get, what's her name? To get Holly bailed out of jail. I love that scene. That was like the funniest scene. I was like, that they could actually write comedy. Like if they just inserted a few more of these and got rid of Mr. Yunioshi, it would have totally worked.
Yeah.
But anyway.
Oh, we didn't even mention Daco lately once. Oh well.
Sad,
go watch the
sad
movie.
Texan man goes back home, sad, brokenhearted.
Oh man, I forgot about him for a second. Yeah.
Yeah.
Your name's
Cracker
Lou.
A lot
Jacks.
does happen in this movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, I was worried that I would be rewatching it and I'd be like, oh wow, nothing happens. I just really like Audrey Hepburn. But I think like
that's only 90%
happens.
true. Oh.
It's not 100%. So it's okay. All right. We can review.
Do you guys want to do a joint one or separate one?
Joint.
Oh, that's a good point. I mean, we could talk about our friend Bruce, or we could talk about 3 separate things.
I'm good with talking about them, but I don't have anything else to talk about. So
let's talk about
I'm
our
okay
friend
with
Bruce.
talking about
Let's do
Bruce
it.
then. Yeah.
all right, Bruce really tries.
Yeah, we gathered at Christian's dwelling a couple of days ago for a
His
Bruce
chambers.
Willis night.
Yeah.
Where we watched The Fifth Element and 12 Monkeys, the Bruce Willis numbers duology, or the first 2 parts of the
Excluding
numbers
The
trilogy,
Sixth Sense.
excluding The Sixth Sense.
Yeah. Hey, I really like The Fifth Element. I love that movie.
Okay.
That comedy totally works for me, and I don't.
Yes.
I really don't. I feel like it's pretty timeless in that regard. For the most part, I feel like it does the world building pretty well. And honestly, like it's kind of a meme sometimes, and you're not really like you're kind of inclined to not really take it too seriously sometimes, especially because of the age of the movie too. But I mean, towards the end, like, I'm totally invested. Like, it's a really simple story. It's just the perfect amount of serious and silly when it comes to establishing, like, the characters and the story and everything. And I feel like Gary Oldman does a great job. And I feel like everything's just different and creative enough where you can really get invested for Fifth Element.
Yeah. I think it's definitely a meme, and I think it knows it's a meme.
Yeah.
I mean, there's lots of elements that I think are meant to be funny in it, and that's
How
more
many?
than just...
How many elements, Zach?
42. And that's more than just Chris Tucker. Like, I think a lot of it is meant to be, like, very deliberately absurd and over the top. And almost like a sillier, like, Blade Runner type film.
Yeah.
Yeah. I do think the romance at the heart of the film is a little underdeveloped.
Yeah.
And I think that's mostly just because...
Genre.
I mean, well, partially, but, like...
Bruce
love
Willis
is meant
hot.
to be so important to the film. Love is meant to be so relevant to, like, the themes of the film and the conclusion of the film.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't really believe that Bruce Willis's character loves Lilu. I think he thinks she's hot. I don't really believe that he loves her, though, and I think that's a pretty significant drawback from the conclusion of the movie when that's like the whole point of the plot.
Look, Zach,
that's
if a mostly nude woman in tape can attract someone, then so can a typewriter ribbon. Okay.
Oh, okay, all right. We're tying it back
That was good. Yeah.
That was a Breakfast at Tiffany's reference that Christian didn't get.
Oh my gosh! Oh, I'm ashamed. I'm beside myself. Well, I also like The Fifth Element. I gave it a 3.5 out of 5, I think, for the same reasons that you guys mentioned. I just want to defend, like, Mila Jovovich for a hot second here. I think she's basically perfect.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think her performance has any real shortcomings.
Like they keep
at all.
saying in the movie.
Yeah. We're oh,
I walked right into that.
We kept mentioning how, like, it really does look like she's speaking a different language and has no idea what's going on. And
Yeah.
maybe
Her
she really
gibberish
doesn't
is
have any
very
idea what's going
convincing.
on. Yeah. 100%.
Yeah, and Zach, you're right. The romance is probably a little underdeveloped, but you know, it's fun. I really thought that I would find Chris Tucker unbearable, but I was laughing my butt off, as these guys can attest. Oh my gosh.
It's true.
Yeah. His butt was gone. Yep.
We don't know where it went. We couldn't find it.
It went straight on to 12 Monkeys.
Yes, the monk
There we
stole
go.
it. The
Yeah,
12
monk,
monks
the
stole
army
it.
of the monk.
Okay, well,
You
12
go,
Monkeys
Zach.
was one that I feel like Mitchell and Christian didn't like as much.
Yeah.
And I can I can totally understand that. 12 Monkeys, I think, is a much less coherent and also a lot less concise of a film. It's very all over the place, and I do think that's deliberate, and that's kind of an element of Terry Gilliam's style. Like his whole artistic style is meant to make you kind of go, wait, what's going on? Like, I don't stop, slow down. Like that's kind of his consistent style in every movie that he makes, and I think it's deliberate. And I think for the most part it does work for 12 Monkeys because it really puts you in that mindset of Bruce Willis's character, where he's sort of like, okay, everybody slow down for a second and let me say what I have to say and make a phone call. But as I pointed out in my review that I posted on Letterboxd, this is based on a French short film from the 60s called La Jetée, and that's a very experimental film, and the whole point is kind of to be like a little puzzle that like the viewer kind of tries to think about and put together. And it's a very kind of small little thing that's only like 30 minutes long. And I think 12 Monkeys is trying to achieve that same purpose, but I think when you take that purpose and blow it up to like an over 2-hour feature film, you need a little bit more to carry on other than just like, I wonder what's going on here. And I don't think 12 Monkeys has quite as much as it needs to be like a perfect cinematic adaptation of that little puzzle box idea.
I will say, though, that Bruce Willis and Brad Pitt being crazy with candid frames and stuff, and the close-ups of them, and like just every specific scenario they were in was very, very thrilling, and I was totally hanging on to like every word of what was going on. Once that started to wear down over and over again, and then the airport scene kept getting played over again, and it felt like we were really, driving a long way just to get to a small town in like Pennsylvania or something, and you're just really disappointed, and you're like, where's the Amish and the cheesesteaks and stuff. Everyone lied to me. So yeah, it's like that. So
I pretty much agree with Mitchell. It's reflected more in my rating than in Mitchell's. I think I gave this a 2.5, and I certainly wouldn't call it bad. There's way too much thoughtful direction and convincing performance in here to simply call this bad and move on.
yeah,
And I don't think it's underthought either. It's like what Mitchell said. I was kind of like, well, what was the point by the end here? And it's definitely a mystery that keeps you guessing, but there are like red herrings that aren't red herrings, and there's so much back and forth that at some point it feels as though the ending is whatever the writer decided the ending is, rather than something that follows like the track of the story. And that was kind of frustrating to me. But Bruce Willis, man, is so into it here. So convincing. Like, so much more than just an action star in this role. So 2.5 for me. If you like being confused at the movies, you will probably really, really like it. So I would still recommend it, even though it didn't quite land for me.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we talked about canted angles. Should I talk about the Marvelous Cinema Tour?
Yes.
yeah, because I don't think Audrey Hepburn is packing in this movie, so we can go. She might as well be, honestly. That guitar could do some whacking.
Oh my gosh, I wish Audrey Hepburn was packing in one of her movies. That'd be great.
Audrey Hepburn in Miss 45. Well, this time on the Marvelous Cinema Tour, I'm talking about Thor, Kenneth Branagh's Thor, which invented the canted angle, as everyone knows. I'm not kidding when I say that literally every other shot in this movie is like a canted angle. And it's really distracting because there are shots that are canted in this where it's just like, okay, but why? Why did you have to cant the angle on? Why did you have to tilt the camera for this shot? Did you have to, Kenneth? I want you to think about this and then tell me. Did you have to?
I'm sorry,
He's
Professor.
Hamlet. He can do whatever he wants.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I like Kenneth Branagh, but I like Kenneth Branagh when he does Shakespeare, and I think, I mean, a lot of the praise that I've heard for Thor is like, oh, well, he takes his Shakespearean style and he applies it to Asgard, and so Asgard feels really like dramatic and has a lot of depth, and whereas the human world feels like strange and otherworldly, and I don't get that at all.
Yeah.
I mean, to quote Tony Stark in The Avengers, when we go to Asgard, I see a bunch of nitwits doing Shakespeare in the Park, and when we're on the human world, I see a bunch of actors getting a paycheck who've been in much better movies. This one was my least favorite in the MCU so far.
I cannot believe it's worse than Hulk. Cannot believe it.
See, I mean, I know you don't like this about Hulk, but the Hulk at least kind of knows that it's silly and pokes a little bit of fun at itself and is at least kind of self-aware. Thor is just so blindingly self-serious, and like everything feels so weighty and self-important, and I am mighty Thor, and father, we have to save Jotunheim, and it really weighed down on me after a while, and I was like, oh my goodness, I'm so bored, and I really couldn't wait for it to end.
Gosh.
Maybe
not to mention.
Sorry, yeah.
And this is something that my mother mentioned when I was talking to this about her to her about this film. I don't really think the romance between Chris Hemsworth and Natalie Portman plays.
Yeah, not really.
Yeah.
And I think that's partially because Chris Hemsworth, as we've learned from later movies, is funny, but I don't think he's a very good actor. I just think he kind of looks the part of Thor, and he has fun playing it, and so you're kind of willing to go along with it. But when he's tasked with like actual serious lines of dialogue and like making you feel for him, all he can really do is like get angry and frustrated, and I think that's like a real limitation for his performance as Thor until they do start letting him be funny, and Natalie Portman I think is I really don't
Watch
know if she
yourself.
cares.
Watch yourself, Zach.
I like Natalie Portman in other things.
I've got you in my sights, damn it.
I think her best performances come from movies where she clearly is like interested in the premise and wants to be involved and isn't just in it because Disney parked a dump truck full of money out front of her house. Or no, I should correct myself. They aren't with Disney at this point because Paramount parked a dump truck full of money out front of her house.
Well, good thing
so-
she's not going to be in any more Marvel movies. We're fine, guys.
Yep.
No more
No,
Jane
no,
Foster.
She is going to be in more Marvel movies because Disney can afford a bigger dump truck than Paramount.
Weren't you Padme at one point? Yep.
Oh gosh.
Get it.
Obi-Wan Kenobi cameo, perhaps.
Probably.
So Thor is a 2 out of 5. Next up on the Marvelous Cinema Tour is Captain America: First Avenger. Now, full disclosure, this is one that I have rewatched at this point, but I, going into this, was not all that excited because I remembered...
Now Mitchell's got you in his sights.
I remembered finding this movie not boring, but just kind of meh, and I didn't really find much memorable about it when I first saw it back in 2011. So if you want to see if my opinion changed or stayed the same or got worse, tune in to our next episode where I'll stop at Captain America: The First Avenger on the Marvelous Cinema Tour.
This segment is just so fantastic. I'm so glad we're doing it. I don't mind that Hulk is not self-serious, Zach. I don't know. Maybe it's just
Okay.
like Hiddleston and Hopkins get me over the hump more than any performer in Hulk, probably.
Maybe. I mean, I remember you mentioned in your review that you didn't like the purple pants joke.
Yeah,
in
it's
Hulk.
stupid and annoying. Oh,
See-
Fooey, you can have your two-dimensional green men if that's what you want.
Hey, it kind of bugged me
Mars
that he
attacks.
didn't wear the purple pants. But, like, I was okay with the joke. I just wanted to see him wear the pants. I wanted to see Edward Norton running around college campuses in enormous purple sweatpants. Just in case he transforms into Hulk.
Okay, fine.
Edward Norton as MC Hammer in The Hulk.
I don't even know what's next anymore. Are we
run
going
the
back to
down.
Tiffany's? I think we are. We're going back to
Run
yeah,
down, yeah,
because
yeah.
we've got to run.
Nope.
We're running to Tiffany's.
No, halfway through the movie, I was like, when did they have breakfast at Tiffany?
Yeah.
Who's Tiffany?
And I was like, oh, the beginning.
Yes. Opening. I didn't realize that until I finished my
I
second
was like,
viewing.
this is
so-
a jewelry store. What's going to happen? Who's bringing a bagel in here?
Which I have to admit, kind of a technicality.
Yeah.
She sort of has breakfast outside of Tiffany's. That's
true.
the extent of the title.
Still at, we have the English language preserved, Zach. It's at the location. It's not in the location, it's at the location.
Ah. Ah.
Big brain.
Ah, technicalities. Yes. I love that opening credits sequence. It didn't mean anything to me on the first viewing, but it totally did the second time.
I liked it a lot, yeah. All right.
1 minute. We quiz Mitchell now because it's
Aye.
season 3 and that's the way it's gonna be. Oh,
Tweedledum, Tweedledee. Shoobity boobity shoo.
Zach looks disappointed. Okay, I think Zach starts. Yes, Zach is starting this one. Okay.
I have to be very careful. This could go really wrong. There we go.
3, 2, 1, go.
Protesting.
3 out of 5.
Tiffany's like the jewelry store.
4 out of 5.
Carring the police department.
1 out of 5.
Moon River.
4 out of
Cracker
5.
Jack prizes.
4 out of 5.
The powder room.
3 out of 5.
A debatable breakfast outside Tiffany's.
4 out of 5.
Being told by Audrey Hepburn that you're sweet and that you look like her brother.
5 out of 5.
Cat.
5 out of 5.
Asking a writer what they've written lately.
3 out of 5.
Sweaters and jeans.
3 out of 5.
Audrey Hepburn cuddling with you and calling you her friend.
3 out of 5.
George Peppard as Paul Varchak.
3 out of 5.
Henry Mancini's score.
3 out of 5.
The name Rusty Trawler.
5 out of 5.
A very lovely, very frightened girl.
3 out of 5.
Shoplifting masks from toy stores.
4 out of 5.
Not belonging to anyone, even oneself.
2 out of 5.
No name slobs.
3 out of 5.
Wow. We have 4 seconds to spare. That was... Whew.
Yeah.
Give me another one.
Now, I want to point out to our viewers that Christian wrote the rundown.
Yes, here lies
I knew it.
me and Zach forever.
I thought-
Mitchell gave it a 1 out of 5, so he's absolved.
I got
He
absolved.
took me down with
Yay!
him.
All right, we addressed the issue with sincerity at the beginning, so
Mm-hmm.
I believe we earned that, but we probably
Okay.
didn't earn that. Okay,
No,
anyway,
we
let's,
definitely did not.
let's move on.
Shall I preview what
Yes.
we're discussing next?
Please,
Do
please
it.
get me out of here.
Yes. The exit. Well, we're gonna. No, I can't do a good segue. Next time we are going to be talking about leaving Las Vegas. Now, I decided to show this film to the gang because I was at the South by Southwest Film Festival back in March, and that was where the Nick Cage film The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent premiered. And everybody was going nuts for Nick Cage. He showed up at the premiere. It was a great experience, and I thought, how can I communicate some of this to Christian and Mitchell? And I think Leaving Las Vegas might be a good vessel for that. It's the film that Cage won Best Actor for.
Nice.
It's critically acclaimed and very well remembered, and recently on Amazon Prime. So if you'd like to see us discuss Leaving Las Vegas, tune in next time to Cookie Pocket.
Thanks, Jeff Bezos.
Right, that was an excellent preview. I'm actually quite excited for this.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thanks for eating breakfast with me, I guess.
Here's the telephone dialer.
Yeah, this is Cookie Pocket. It's never too early to eat cookies at your pockets. At Tiffany. It's time to go. Good night. Yeah.
Good day.
Bye.
Good night.
Goodbye.